Hey, welcome back to Even More Mashed Up. We are the pop culture podcast where two professors talk all things pop culture. I'm Alan.
And I am Patrick, and today is a day long awaited in the annals of the podcast.
Do we have annals?
We do.
I did not know we
I'm
had
pretty
annals.
sure we do. But if you're the historian, you're in charge of the annals.
Well, we may not have annals.
Oh, okay.
That is all I'm going to say.
But yes, today
Would the annals be just the stuff that's on Spotify?
Pretty much.
Okay, we have annals.
It's pretty much the podcast itself. It's a self-analyzing thing. Anyway, as I said, long waited because we are talking about
Yes?
the Netflix adaptation
Uh-huh.
of Don DeLillo's White Noise, which,
Yes.
of course, longtime listeners will know is my absolute favorite novel of all time.
We've not really talked about that much, though, I don't think, over the course. I think you'd have to do a pretty deep dive into the annals
I think,
to discover that you are a big White Noise fan.
number one, there's nothing wrong with asking our audience to do a deep dive into the annals of the podcast, to search for previous references to
I'm sure
I love
that,
White Noise.
you know what? We should give a prize
Oh, there you go.
to the first listener who gets in touch with us and gives us a citation to you're talking about White
There
Noise.
we go. Yes, there you go.
Only 170 odd, 180, 200? How many?
200.
200
200,
200 episodes.
200 or 201. We're right around 200.
Kind of dig through. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but yes,
a happy weekend.
It is a moment that we have been waiting for,
You have been.
that the audience has been waiting for.
You sure have.
That Alan has been waiting for.
You cannot wait.
That Zach has waited for even
Yes,
before he was with us on the show.
especially you.
Woo! And also
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. That's my biggest concern. You said we should start with general thoughts.
Uh-huh.
I don't know quite how to navigate a show about a book that means so much to you. Because I have to say, I read the book maybe 15 years ago. How long have you been here?
This is year 17.
So about 15 years ago,
Yeah.
because you love the book.
I do love the book.
And you would talk about the book a lot.
I would.
And you
That was
would,
back when I taught it almost
you would
every
teach
single
the book,
semester.
like no
Yes.
matter what the class was. It
Pretty
was like
much.
White Noise will fit.
No, we're doing African American lit White Noise.
That's right. That's right. Is it Asian lit?
Asian-
White
White
Noise. Yeah. It didn't matter what the class was. The book was there. So I thought to myself, if Patrick likes the book so much, I should read it. And I read it, and I really liked the book. I wouldn't say it's my favorite book
Yes, that's fine.
of all time, but it's a really good book. But I don't remember it particularly well.
Yeah.
And I'm a little nervous
Yeah.
about navigating the show with you. I don't want to offend you. I have a feeling that there must be parts of the show that offend you because you're a canonist. Like you believe in the canon and there is the original White Noise. So I assume there will be a list of complaints.
There are some, yes. There are some significant deviations from the book
Do you remember
that
how
I find problematic.
Do you remember how upset you were when you thought the kids were going to have different names?
Yes, and they did not change the kids'
I know, but
names.
you were just really
I was
upset
very
about
upset,
that. And if
yes.
that's going to upset you, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, holy cow.
Yeah, no,
Like,
well,
I mean,
I-
it just seems like a recipe for disaster.
I found it a difficult film to navigate.
Yes.
Because watching the film,
Yeah.
it was impossible for me to separate watching the film from my experience of reading the book.
Yes.
Because the entire book is narrated by Jack's character.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were many times where lines that characters in the film say are things that Jack in his narration say. And every time someone said that, I was like, they don't say that. That's Jack.
But
Like, that's not his line. That's Jack's.
But is it possible? And I'm just wondering about the distance between you and your mic, because Zach usually says it's this. It's all good?
Yes,
He's fine,
Yeah,
yeah.
see, I made sure I'm far enough away.
He's loud enough.
It does help,
Yeah,
right, that
exactly.
he's loud enough. So
I made sure I was far enough
So-
away.
I was talking with Bobby about this, because we were talking about the difficulty of adapting a book to film.
Yes.
And I feel like the only way to enjoy a movie like this is to disconnect yourself a little bit
Yes,
from
I
the
couldn't-
source material. And I know that you can't.
couldn't do it.
You can't, like, often for superheroes, too. Like, for stuff that matter...
I'm better at it with superheroes than I was with this film. This film
Oh,
was impossible.
no.
This
Wait,
film
wait,
was
this was-
impossible for me to separate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this I had a really
okay,
tough
Boomer.
time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Really?
It was,
Really?
I know this
Wow.
book
Yeah.
backwards
No, you
and
do. Like
forwards.
you could probably recite
a lot,
sections
to-
of the book.
to a
Like
certain
if
extent.
somebody got you started, like a
Possibly.
bike going downhill, like
yeah.
you'd get a couple lines in before you wiped out.
I don't know if I'd get that far, but there's enough that I could recognize, like when people were saying lines that were not their own in the book.
Because I generally like the movie.
Okay,
I think adaptations are hard.
They are.
Because if it's a really well-known book, people bring expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like people love The Grapes of Wrath as a film.
yes,
I cannot watch it and enjoy it because
Mm-hmm.
it feels to me that it runs almost counter to what Steinbeck was.
Well,
actually...
they give it a happy ending, as I recall, in the film. So
Yeah. It's right. The endings are very, very different. The film is like, we got 10 days of picking and things are good. Yeah, and so I understand it, but I just, I'm afraid we're for a litany of things that aren't the same.
Not a litany. Because I do understand some of the things they did to condense certain things down.
Okay.
There are just a couple of things that they did that I don't think work. And one of them in particular that I find very problematic. But
okay. Are we saving those? That's like a teaser for later.
We can save that for later. Yeah, but there's one big one that I find really problematic. But yeah, it's. The other thing, too, is I will give them credit for the way that they did sort of still preserve the structure of the novel in the film, in that the film's divided into 3 sections. There's the same 3 sections in the novel.
Right. Okay.
And what goes on in each of those 3 sections of the film is basically what goes on in the novel.
Okay.
The problem...
Sounds like a big win.
The problem is that...
Doesn't sound like a big win.
Well, no, the issue... There is a lot of setup work done in the first section, Waves and Radiation, which feels somewhat disconnected and plotless in the reading. And they cut a lot from it.
Okay.
And I think because of that, the stuff that could have resonated more in the remaining 2 sections, I don't know that it quite worked as well.
So a real artistic complaint.
Well, it's not so much... It's just, for example,
yeah.
I don't know that the film ever gave us any real reason to care about any of these characters. They're all kind of weird and quirky from the get-go, and they remain that way. And like the kids in particular don't really get, I think, nearly as much time as they do.
Yeah. But most of the characters in the novel, if I remember correctly, are kind of weird and quirky.
They are, but you also come to love them in a way that I don't think the film quite has the length at the beginning to do. Because it's clear that I'm forgetting the producer's name. What's his name? Noah Baumbach.
Oh, you're talking about the director.
The director, sorry,
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the other issue, too, is that it's clear that he really wants to emphasize the disaster section of the movie. And I think he maybe tries to get to that too quickly. And because of that, some of the things he does, too, I think don't establish some of the themes of the novel in the early part that he actually does do in the later part. Like the scene at the end of the airborne toxic event in the film where the guy holds up the TV and says, we're not on TV, doesn't our suffering rate the time or whatever. There's a whole in the first section pattern of kind of the difference between what's real and what's represented and that they live in a world of the image. There's an earlier disaster where people are not televised and someone says like, well, their experience meant nothing. Yeah. And none of that's in the film. And so that moment just doesn't resonate the way it could have.
I did feel that, but maybe not the way that it does in the book. Yeah. And that I can't argue. Bobby was complaining that the guy that's going to get in the snake cage for 24 hours.
Oh, Oris Mercator.
Isn't there at all, right?
Yeah.
Like he's completely cut. And Bobby said that's his favorite.
Oris is a pretty great part. Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that got cut.
Right.
But yeah. Well, and again, a lot of the stuff with the kids got cut. I mean, that's a big chunk of, particularly in the second and third section, that's a lot of Heinrich stuff.
And it's a real challenge, though, for a filmmaker to take a book like White Noise, which is very dense. And very layered.
Well, it's very, and the other thing too is
to capture all of that is, I think, is a challenge.
Well, and the other thing too is that the second and third section, Airborne Toxic Event is a disaster movie, so making a disaster movie works.
Okay.
The Dial-O-Rama is a midlife crisis sort of film that works.
Right.
The problem is the first part of the novel, Waves and Radiation, is a sitcom, and because you get 22 chapters that are loosely connected. That's basically a different scene in the Gladney's life each day.
Yeah.
There's not a film version equivalent of that. And so I think that's why it got cut down quite a bit. Is that, you can't do, an hour long of stuff that seems to make no sense.
Right. Well, to me, I thought that was White Noise.
It is, but I think particularly within that section, I think... Yeah. That's the one that doesn't translate.
In a way,
it doesn't translate as directly to film as the other 2 sections do.
Fair. I do kind of like the idea of juxtaposing sitcom to tragedy.
Yeah.
Like that that kind of works. But I have some other issues with the end of the film. But maybe we should talk about what we liked first.
Okay.
The first thing I so love the opening, the car crash montage. Is Murray's teaching students about how they should understand that kind of spectacle? What have I stepped on? I can already see the look on your face. What have I done wrong?
You haven't done anything wrong.
The way he's teaching students about how they should understand, like that this is spectacle, that it's actually about American optimism, that it is, it's not the violence we should see, that we have to look past it, to the innocence, that these are, what does he say, stagings of secular optimism and self-celebration. I just thought it was a lovely introduction to a film.
It is my issue with it.
I knew it, Zach. I told you.
No, it's not. It's not with you. It's with the film. Is that's one of the ways I see, because that's the one moment prior to Airborne Toxic Event that really talks about disaster directly.
Right.
And so I can see them kind of plucking it out of the middle of the novel and putting it at the beginning.
Oh, it's in the middle of the novel.
Oh yeah, it's another random moment.
Well, it's just
and I
unacceptable.
Think, well, no,
I apologize to you for liking something that wasn't in the appropriate
you're not
sequence.
Letting me finish.
Okay, please.
It changes, I think, the thematic trajectory of the film.
Okay.
In that I don't know, because there's other moments early on that I think speak better to that theme of that they live in kind of a represented reality,
right?
Than that. That one's a bit more complicated in making that point. And I feel like it kind of puts too much emphasis on the disaster, which the disaster is something that happens in the novel, but it's not the be-all and end-all of the novel. And in a way, the film kind of makes it that way.
But isn't Murray kind of telling you, hey, don't get hooked up in this. Look past it.
He is, but it's in the context of the novel's theme of representation versus reality, not separate from it in the way that I think putting it at the beginning makes it.
Okay. Interesting. Well, anyway, I liked it, and I stand by it.
Okay. I can see why they did it. It feels to me like it, particularly, and again, this is me talking my experience of the novel.
Yeah.
I don't know that it worked for me. It didn't work for me.
It did for me,
the moment they started, I was like, oh, I feel like they're shifting already from...
I'm just an uncivilized Philistine, tromping my way through this movie.
Possibly.
Yeah. So that does get us talking a little bit about faculty. So one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about, I'm always really interested in the way in which pop culture presents teachers, or more specifically professors. We've talked about them here before. Miss Grundy from Riverdale and whatnot. We've talked about how teachers show up.
The history professor from Timeless.
Right, yeah, or the guy on the I can't remember the name of the ship on Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, the history professor, like there's a certain kind of way that history professors or English this kind of professors show up, and so I'm kind of wondering, is we kind of look at the movie in real life, what do they get right or wrong about the lived faculty experience?
Well, I will say one thing. This is one place where the movie does do better than the book.
Okay.
In that I appreciate the diversity among the faculty in the film, because the book is very white.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to see them, because Oris Mercator is about as close to a non-white person in the book as you get.
Can you help us with Oris Mercator? I know nothing about him, but snakes.
That's all there. I mean, when Jack first meets him, he tries to pin down what ethnicity is.
Okay,
and he basically lists every single one, saying he could be any of these.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very faculty way of thinking about the world.
So, and then there's
all possibilities.
There's a group of Black Jehovah's Witnesses that are at the camp with him at one point, and that's and then his doctor. That's really about it. I was happy to see the diversity among the faculty.
I think in many ways, this book is a product of the 80s.
Oh, it is.
And it captures a lot of the 80s in ways that I want to talk about that I think are very, very insightful. That DeLillo saw things that I think people didn't see, or people chose to look away from in the 1980s. But so there was, to the diversity point, it was a more diverse faculty.
Yes.
But it was fascinating to me the way they captured the dynamics at the calf lunch. The way in which women sat at a different table.
Yeah, Winnie's at a different table. Yeah.
And they were kind of consulted, but only very narrowly, and clearly were not part of. So there's clearly a critique of. For whatever diversity you see happening there's also a critique about the ways in which the professoriate is closed off and create systems that don't allow access. Fair? Not fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Anything else?
In terms of good things?
Well, no, in terms of like presentation to faculty. I have some ideas to pitch at you.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, go ahead and...
Okay. If Adam Driver's going to play a professor, he has to what? Put on some weight and not look so good.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So clearly there's a judgment about how faculty look. No?
No. Adam Driver's Adam Driver. He doesn't need to do anything. He's good.
No, he's really good, but he does.
But he does.
He's got like a substantial pot belly.
Yeah.
And is really like he's leaning into that midlife academic stereotypical look.
Again, Adam Driver is not who I would have played the role.
I thought he was pretty good, though.
Yeah, well, the problem is...
And I'm not, you know me.
They make a
you've
particular
heard me talk
point.
about Kylo Ren on this show.
I know what you're going to say. They make a particular point that he's 41.
Yeah.
In the book, he's 51.
Oh, for God's sake.
And
You
so
know what?
we
have to cancel the whole. We just have to cancel the whole. You know, Hope's friend is actually in the scene where he's teaching Hitler class.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
I saw him this weekend at Hope's play. I grilled him about it. It was like 15 hours he was on the set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Most of the time just like sitting around in like a big convention center.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, the Hitler-Elvis debate is one of the signature moments of the text.
I want to come back. I want to come back to that for sure. But before we get there, did they portray professors with the right amount of pomposity, would you say? Wearing the robes across campus, like this sort of assumed like superiority over all of the mere mortals among whom they must walk and teach?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the robe being sort of the visual manifestation of that.
Right. Would you wear your robe to teach?
No.
What if I gave you $10? Because, Zach, it is...
Not for $10.
The brightest yellow robe you have ever seen in your
sun
life.
Gold.
I mean, it is.
The color is sun gold.
It shines like the sun. It's
very bright.
It's almost otherworldly.
My fear is
if
there is ever a sniper at graduation.
If they're looking for you're done for.
Yeah, I'm the bright yellow dude in a sea of black.
Yeah,
I'm
there's a little blue and red in there, but it's mostly. Yeah.
They definitely stand out.
It made me feel better watching it because I still wear the robe I bought for $10 at the bookstore.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I feel like that makes me slightly less.
Slightly less?
Yeah, slightly less. But, if it were up to me, I'd get rid of all the robes.
Yeah.
Except for the yellow one, because I know you love it. Are faculty ridiculously focused on areas that are obscenely narrow and obtuse? No, Zach is giving
Zach
a heavy nod to that one.
Zach seems to agree.
Right. Like that Murray is an expert on living icons or like longs to be the Elvis expert. Does that strike you as authentic to the Academy?
It's not entirely wrong.
Would you agree?
We do tend to carve out our little niches.
It is true. Do we have tremendous ego over very small accomplishments?
Oh, absolutely.
What am I?
We have tremendous ego over very small things, period, not just accomplishments.
Yeah, because our accomplishments are few and far between. I've told you the story before. I sit in my office one day and somebody calls me, and I pick up the phone and they say, "Is this Alan Austin?" And I say, "Yes," because it was. And they said to me, "Somebody said I should call you and talk to you because you are the world's leading expert." And I was like, "Oh yeah, like I am the world's leading expert." And then he continued the sentence. In Japanese Americans. And I'm like, okay, like that's narrowed it quite a bit, but still, like a lot of important scholarship done in that field who resettled during World War II. I'm like, okay, like it's getting pretty narrow in Cincinnati. And I'm like, okay, like I'm the only person who's actually written that essay.
Leading expert.
Right. So I'm the world's leading expert.
Yes.
In such a narrowly defined topic that it's quite a miracle that anybody ever called me.
That is what we do.
To literally right, but that's
we define our small pond in which we are the large frog or fish or whatever it is. Is it big fish in a small pond?
No, it's the large frog.
I think it's a frog.
It's not a frog.
I think it's a frog.
I want to be the large frog.
I want to be the big frog on my small pond. Yes. I'm sure it is a frog. 100%.
You are the world's leading expert on large frogs and small ponds.
I'm the expert on pond cliches. Pretty sure that's what it is. It's a big frog on a lily pad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big frog on a small lily pad. I'm pretty sure that's the phrase.
Okay. All right. So You would agree then that, and then of course when you have that level of pomposity, when you're caught saying something wrong, you have to double down on
Pretty
it.
much.
And
Oh, yeah.
triple down on it to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, no, you will understand my expertise.
Yes, no, that is
if I have to
exactly-
talk for 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I meant. Big frog in a small pond. We are all big frogs on small ponds. Small golden ponds that we are on. On golden pond joke there.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were just saying you were sitting over a bowl of your own urine.
No.
Was the question I was wondering about.
No.
Which is
It's going for an on golden pond.
kind of a fairly apt metaphor, actually.
not. Yeah,
Either
it's
one.
probably true,
Either
yes.
one kind of works. But
Urine is very niche.
I bet there's not a world's leading expert on urine. I bet, you know what? I bet there is urine in literature.
There
I bet there's
totally
like an
is.
entire field of urine in literature.
Yeah.
There probably is.
People.
There's something about everything nowadays. Like,
I feel
But-
like we've drifted a little bit from the
but
film.
the way in which Jack is like the Hitler studies
Yes.
guy.
Yes.
And yet underneath it is this tremendous insecurity, which is in the novel as well.
Yeah, well,
But-
and that's
yeah,
one of the things
please.
in the novel that for me that I sort of see going on in the novel is that yes, Jack has built up this complete sort of image of himself as a Hitler studies professor.
Right.
But as we see in the film, he doesn't know German.
Right.
There is no substance behind that. It's all just image. And so,
Right.
he's largely insecure because real Germans are coming. And he is a fake Hitler studies.
But it raises a question, like, I guess you should speak German if you're a Hitler studies guy.
Apparently Jack feels you should.
Right.
That there
right.
is a kind of authenticity that is demanded.
Oh, that makes me, I understand why I bristle at that a little bit.
Yeah.
My Japanese is not particularly.
My Spanish is not great.
Right.
As a someone who published
Unless
a book on
space
Japan.
is Spanish.
I believe it's Spacio.
Spazio. So, finally, the departmental politics are petty and dumb.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, the less you have to fight over, the bigger the stakes become
Yes.
over little stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why. What is it? Academics are so thoroughly invested and fight over things because there's so little at stake.
Right. Yes. Right. It's sad. This movie is a sad indictment of
But it's
those who call themselves doctors.
It's a sad, funny indictment.
Yes.
Of faculty.
It makes it a little easier to go down.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I think is totally true.
Okay.
What teaching looks like. When they do the duet, it's almost like a ballet.
It is.
Like
yes.
it's sung and it's danced and it's just, I love that moment of film.
They did a nice
Like,
job
it
of that.
was-
From
I thought-
that was one of the moments. I will give. I mean, I'll give Baumbach credit that there's a lot of stuff that is very directly translated from the book to the film.
And nicely translated.
And generally captured well. And yeah, so the Hitler Elvis, because I always I always sort of imagined. I think they're in a much smaller space in the book, but they're always sort of like circling around each other
Right.
as they do in the film. So
Yeah, and there's a student, for reasons I don't understand, taping it, which kind of creates an even more kind of structured cinematic.
Well, and there's
Experience.
also a moment that I thought maybe the student that hoped to know was going to be that.
Yeah.
Because at that point in the novel, we've established that Jack doesn't know German.
Right.
And is very insecure about it.
Right.
At one point, I think when he refers to Hitler as a mama's boy, one of the students says "mother's boy" in German, or what mama's boy in German.
Yeah.
And Jack looks at him with great fear and suspicion. I was really hoping that was going to be in there. I was like, it's probably too small.
No, Hope's friend was in the big lecture hall scene.
Oh, just the
sitting at
one,
a desk.
the
Yeah,
one where
not-
he's showing the film?
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He's not in the slow.
Oh, okay. I thought he was in that
That
one.
would have been
Okay.
a step up.
Okay,
for
gotcha.
Sam, but yeah, he didn't.
I did like that
get
because
there.
in the book, that's the one time you see Jack teach, is he basically shows a whole bunch of films for the entire class. No discussion, nothing.
Well-
It's just a bunch of films.
Like Scream Queens.
Yeah.
Remember the guy in
Yes.
Scream
Oh,
Queens?
yeah, yeah.
Like he shows up on campus all of a sudden. He's like, "I'm the new English professor.
Yeah, 'cause that's how
Let's
it
watch some movies."
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one class you see.
Yeah. Boy, that was a bad dad, too.
Mm.
So, but I wonder if that's how students felt back in the heyday when you and I team taught together, the comic book class. If they felt like you and I were Jack and Murray, kind of crossing the room, doing this like intellectual kind of ballet, balancing ideas.
Yeah, at times, yes, I'm sure they did. At times, I'm pretty sure if we went back into the annals of our course reviews,
Yes.
intellectual ballet, I'm sure was used.
More than once.
A lot of
yeah,
times, yes.
intellectual ballet. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
now
what-
that you say that, it It does ring a bell.
Yeah, I mean, the next time, should we ever teach the class again,
Yeah.
we should stand up at some point and just circle the room.
We totally should. We should 100% do that.
And
Zach could come with like an 80s handheld
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
camcorder.
Zach, yes, we could.
And like just videotape the whole thing.
Exactly, the whole thing, yes.
But listening to what they have to say, there's this kind of absurdity, right? In that they're both so wise and they're both so empty. Mm-hmm. And they're both at the same time.
Yeah, well, again, I think a lot of, and again, it goes towards sort of my interpretation of Jack, that he actually doesn't know a lot.
Right.
Is that what both Jack and Murray are talking about with Hitler and Elvis is trivia. Like, not, it's all kind of like the kind of questions you would get on like a Trivial Pursuit type thing.
Right, as if Trivial Pursuit would be a good judge of your credentials.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. The trivia defines, like memorizing names and dates in wars.
Yeah.
Or names of books.
Well, we do more than that.
What else? Poems?
Names of authors.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so there is, and maybe that's why there's such insecurity built into the profession. Because what you really learn is how much you don't know. I mean, who wants a degree in that?
No.
Seems kind of useless.
That's why you want to pursue something practical.
Frankly. Yes. Yes. Luckily, my kids are studying cinematography and theater, creative writing, and
opera.
Music. We're doing well. Like,
yeah.
Knocked that one out of the park.
Cash cows.
Yeah.
Cash cows, baby.
Yeah, I could retire any minute now. I could just live on my kids' residuals.
Pretty much. I mean, Vicky can't retire anytime soon, but you can.
Right. Exactly. They can only support one of us.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. So one of the other things that struck me about the novel, and then I'll get out of the way and let you pick up some stuff.
No, that's fine.
Here's a bonus fair or foul.
Oh.
From Chris McCoy of the Memphis Flyer.
Okay.
What was considered over-the-top crazy in 1985 is now just stuff that happens in everyday life.
Yeah, that's fair. It's one of the interesting things I like about teaching White Noise. Because when White Noise came out in 85, everyone thought it was a work of science fiction. Because it seemed like it was, the world was not quite there.
Right.
And then when I first started teaching White Noise, which was in Colorado in around like 2000 or so, like my students invariably would say, they're like, "Oh, this is the world I grew up in. Like I recognize this world."
Yeah.
Now teaching it, students are just like, "This is old.
It's antique.
Like this seems so ancient and."
But it's not. I would argue because as I watched the movie. It opens with like a classic kind of 80s vibe, I think, if you look at the cars and the fashion.
The Day of the Station Wagons is the opening paragraph of the novel.
Yeah, it's just
I was very glad to see that. I was like, okay.
It's brilliant, and it felt like I was stepping back in time into the 1980s. But it quickly hits home that like the ways in which the 80s were seeding so much of what we have today. This is, I think, the brilliance of Don DeLillo. Assuming Don is authentic to the book. But like if you just start thinking it through, the ways in which the age of Reagan literally impact more than just politics. Like, so the movie talks about mass shootings. Is that in the book?
Yes.
Like they're talking about the one guy that shot 5 people, and the kids are talking back and forth, and the one guy says, "Well, he only shot 5."
Oh, the guy that Heinrich is playing chess with.
Plus a deputy later, right? And it was in Iron City, which nobody cares about. So there's not going to be enough media appeal for this guy to become a story. That seems so relevant.
Yeah, no, I mean that's
today, like where like mass shootings happen so frequently on a daily basis that you see them like scroll across the screen and you're done. Like we take all of that for granted.
The line that jumps out for me in the novel, and it's not in the film because they didn't do this scene, is. There's a plane crash that almost happens. It doesn't happen. And there's a line in 1985 that says, barring terrorist attacks, airplanes are the safest way of travel. I'm like, oh, that hits differently after 9/11.
Yeah. But the fascination with disaster in the novel and the movie describes us so well today.
Oh, yeah.
Like I almost think that's our number one choice for entertainment anymore. Like why else would you watch Fox News?
Yeah,
except to be entertained by disaster. Like, why else would you watch 24/7 news
reality
cycles?
TV and things like that, that kind of spectacle of television.
Speaking of which, a quick timeout. We have to do an episode on The Traitors.
Oh, God.
Have you continued watching it?
No, I have not.
Oh,
I couldn't watch the rest of that first episode. It was so terrible.
No. I'm telling you. The things we could do with that show,
was
it
awful.
is. Yeah.
That show is so beneath Alan Cummings.
So Yes, so spectacularly awful. We have to talk about it.
I don't think I can watch
I'm
that.
telling you, the drama that they build,
Wow.
it is spectacular.
Like
Did you ever watch Below Deck?
I've watched Below Deck here or there.
So Kate from
No,
Below Deck
I don't know any of the
is on the
characters.
Traitors.
Oh, yes.
She goes on a reign of terror
doesn't-
that everybody should watch. It is the way she plays the game, spectacular. Now, I haven't finished it yet. Like, I still have the last episode to go. It is must-watch TV.
I couldn't watch more than the half hour.
I'm telling
of
you,
that
we
first episode I watched.
have to do it. We never do reality television.
There's
and
no
it is-
reason why. I hate
it is-
reality
I
television.
love reality television. I know.
reality
And you're the boss. So consumption is a way to avoid death. Like that is like the 80s and that consumption boom is a way of avoiding death. Totally makes sense. The continual search for drugs to make people better instead of, people making people better.
Or not even to make people better, to make people forget about the fact that they're not well.
Sorry, which is the way that better is defined.
Because
right. In the
dialogue
novel,
doesn't
right?
actually do anything to treat death. It just makes you forget you're afraid of it.
Right. But that is the medical industrial complex. No offense to somebody who's moving forward into it, but we prescribe all kinds of medications like this, and then medications on top of that to deal with the unwanted symptoms of the medication that you don't really need.
Yeah.
The idea that in the 1980s Americans are drawn to larger than life and mythic figures. You can draw a straight line from White Noise to Donald Trump.
Yep.
Like it's right there. Like he's telling you your obsession with disaster.
And now you understand why I teach this book every time I get.
Your insistence with not dealing with the problems of the world in which you live. That's how you get Donald Trump. That's how you get the political situation we live in. Like it is, I think, for a book written in 1985, it is ridiculously prescient in its ability to diagnose almost all of the problems that are going to come out of that decade.
And it was even in its own time, because about, a couple months after the book came out was the Bhopal, India disaster.
Yeah.
Which everyone was like, it's exactly like what happened in White Noise.
Yeah.
Right. So there's always been kind of this. That's one of the reasons why I think White Noise, among all of DeLillo's works, I think sort of stands out and sticks with people. Because it is. I mean, he is diagnosing kind of 1985, 1980s American society, but in a way that you can kind of trace, as you've done, a direct line from there to where we are now.
It turns out when you have a disease in its early stages and you don't treat it, it gets worse. Surprise. The idea in the movie that Americans will follow any frontiersman anywhere without even thinking about it. He's a cowboy. I'm going with him.
Yeah.
Or in this case, he's driving a big SUV.
Yeah. Which is that's one of the places where the film does deviate. Because they don't go plowing into a river. They actually do get to the freeway by following the frontier people.
So I like the movie better in that way.
So
like
that was another moment where it was like that kind of where Jack is. Well, because one of the other kind of themes that's kind of bubbling under the book is Jack trying to live up to that image of kind of the cowboy American masculinity.
Yeah.
And so I did like that scene in the movie, because I'm like, because whenever Jack tries to do that in the film, he fails spectacularly. And so him, getting the station wagon into the river was great.
The movie in that way is kind of a great critique of masculinity and kind of the demands of masculinity and how it is destructive.
Yeah.
That
feeds into the confrontation with Mink as well.
Right. So symptoms that keep changing as the news reports different symptoms.
Yeah.
It's how do you watch that and not think about it's okay for a former president to have classified documents in their home until the other side has them, and then it's not okay, and you're just flip-flopping back. Like it's just a symptom of the moment, right? We're just and then finally the desire to ignore the ugly stuff. One of my favorite moments in the scene is the dinner, as the cloud is coming, as the airborne toxic event.
And they did not change much of that from the book at all.
You can see it from the balcony, and the kids are like, holy, we need to do something, right? And Jack is like, it's going to be fine. Like the wind's probably not going to blow. Yeah. If it does, it'll probably blow the other direction.
I like when I think it's Steffi who's like all upset about the siren going by and saying to evacuate. And I think it's bad. I was like, well, what was the tone? Did the tone seem like it was immediate? Like we should do this now?
Yeah.
Like what was the nuance of the tone? She's like, we're blaring it over loudspeakers.
But Jack's insistence upon not confronting the ugly reality, the death, the destruction, the
other thing too is that Jack had, and this is something that carries through in the novel as well. Jack is so much invested in his image of himself as a Hitler professor, and that the idea of that image is some kind of protection.
Yeah.
He says, like, you never see college professors evacuating on TV. That's for the people that are beneath us.
That's
it's like,
great.
You're not wrong. But
Right.
he is sort of putting faith in what is a completely kind of dubious representation.
But I see him doing that to avoid the reality,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Like, he's so desperate. He's like, "What's for dessert, dear?" As the siren goes blaring by out front. It's just, I thought maybe I should read the book again.
No, you should always read the book again.
Well, fair point. But I just thought it was depressing. It's not as if people didn't know this in the 1980s.
Yeah.
It was that people chose not to think about this in the 1980s. And, that's kind of an uncomfortable realization to recognize that we all could have seen this. It's not really a huge surprise.
If only we all, read White Noise.
Every semester.
Not every semester.
Maybe I'm going to start teaching
Once a
it.
year.
I should have taught it in my environmental history class this semester.
I told you to teach it in your I taught it in my sustainability class.
Yeah. Well, I can't always be like you, unfortunately.
No,
I have to strike out on my own, so people don't see me as you.
And yet, here you're reminded of why you shouldn't strike out on your own, and you should just do what I do.
Well, I'm going to ignore that like Jack and Babette would. I'm just going to pretend like I don't know that.
Okay,
I'm going to go to that grocery store, and I'm just going to dance through the aisles of consumption, baby.
I did like the video at the end over the credits.
Brilliant.
I thought that was great. That was another good moment. And I liked the very day-glow supermarket, because that was very in keeping with kind of the novel. Like, I don't think a supermarket ever actually looked that day-glow, but it kind of captures the way we feel about kind of the day-glow kind of 1980s supermarket.
Absolutely. Like, and the way that it connects, if you'll indulge me for a minute, the way it connects consumption and avoidance.
Yeah.
So I just read a book on Sun Ra. Do you know who Sun Ra is?
Oh,
he's like this avant-garde jazz musician, composer, director who did like some really far out stuff. But he was really into wordplay and the way in which like you could reread the Bible by taking the word and turning it into like wordplay.
Ah.
And so literally, I how could you not think of Sun Ra? They're literally doing the avoid dance. Avoidance, right?
Gotcha.
Like literally, the movie, if Sun Ra were still alive, would be like, that guy gets it.
Yeah.
It's literally the avoid dance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is what we do, and we still do. Mm-hmm. Shame on us. So anyway, I feel like I've suggested a couple big ones. I should let you maybe take the lead. I have a couple other things I could mention, but
well, I mean, I have. I mean, you've covered a lot of the things that are good about the film and the book.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Is that where the title comes from?
What?
White noise. It comes from that avoidance. Like, is white noise the noise of everyday life that allows us to blind ourselves to larger questions?
It's something. I mean, again, what the white noise is in the novel. It exists on multiple levels.
Okay.
Because at one point there's I mean, in general, white noise is kind of a general motif in the novel for the things that are all kind of floating around us and there all the time, but we only really pay attention to them every once in a while.
Yeah.
But white noise is also death, which is that thing that is always sort of floating around us.
Because that's the other thing I have on my notes.
Yeah.
Is it death?
Well, there's a moment late in the novel where I think Jack or someone asks, what if death is all around us, and someone says, like electrical noise, white. And it's like, okay, so
yeah.
So white noise is kind of all of the things that are kind of, and that we live in such a kind of media consumption saturated that there's stuff everywhere around us.
Yeah.
And that stuff all has side effects. And there are, there's the things that are around us, and then there's the things that come from the things around us. And we're just sort of all awash in stuff that is in different ways toxic.
So like shopping for gum at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Where you either get sugar-free and cancer, or you get sugar and fat.
Yeah.
Like that kind of. Yeah. So that kind of reminds me of the point where they can't distinguish between a simulated and a real disaster. Like, there's this kind of, like, tension, like, is this a simulated disaster? Is this a real disaster?
Oh, you're talking about Simuvac.
Yeah.
Yes, I love
that.
Simuvac plays a much larger role in the book.
inability, though, to
loves
distinguish is really interesting. And again, to your point earlier, Jack's response is, well, like, environmental stuff does happen and suffering results, but that usually happens to people who aren't rich and aren't white. Yeah.
Well,
right? The sense of protection that's not a real
The other thing that they don't follow up with Simuvac that's
Yeah.
in the novel, that's not in the film, that I think feed into your point, is you find out later why Simuvac does what it does. Because they explain it but you see another simulation later on.
Okay.
Where they explain that's because, like, you know, you take your umbrella to the office every single day. The one day you don't take it is the day it rains.
Right.
Like, that's the mechanism we're trying to employ. Is that if we keep simulating disaster, we will avoid actual disaster. Which, of course, is completely makes no sense.
No.
But it's again another form of that kind of avoidance.
But
and a way that makes us think that we have control over the world around us that is actually hostile and out to get us.
But if we have a catastrophe every day, simulated or not, we become kind of inured to catastrophe. No, like if every day there's going to be a catastrophe, it's either going to be simulated or real. But there's going to be a catastrophe every day.
Well, and that's
we just, like, the 1980s trained us
yeah.
to live with a catastrophe every
That's
day.
true, yeah.
And that's kind of a really depressing realization that, you know, DeLillo, again, figured it out so long ago.
Yeah.
What do you think about the family dynamics? Were those true to the book?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, again, I felt like we didn't get quite as much with the kid. I mean, Wilder, they didn't really do anything with Wilder. He's much more prominent in the book.
Yeah.
I think by and large they did. I don't know how recognizable. Like, I can recognize what they're doing from the book. I don't know if there's enough to just realize how they are. Because I mean, what
Right.
I did
Yeah.
like. There are a couple moments where you kind of got the family and the characters all kind of talking over each other and kind of the chaos of their lives.
Yeah.
Which I certainly agree with, but at times it almost got too chaotic. And you couldn't, because in the novel you can discern what everyone is saying within those conversations. And there were times where it got a little bit too noisy.
In that way, it's almost a movie that demands repeat watching.
Yeah.
To like start sussing out.
Yeah.
Like a Valjean, Javert kind of, you know, where they sing over each other.
Yes.
In that kind of way, like in the musical.
Yeah. But
yeah.
by and large, the family. I mean, the one thing I will say that I don't like that they did.
Yes.
Is they made Wilder Jack and Babette's son, which he's not. None of the kids are Jack and Babette's.
Oh, okay.
In the book.
Well, that's interesting because that could change.
It kind of changes the
something
nature of the
substantial,
family. Yeah.
unlike the names, which I was less sure of. But yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was when Jack says, "Oh, Wilder is mine." I'm like, "Oh, no, he's not. He's not supposed to be." So that did annoy me.
Oh, poor Jack. You don't know.
Yeah. So.
But the idea, like, that they keep coming back to, you can't have truth in families because it destroys the myth of happiness. Mm-hmm. That's a hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard.
The family is the cradle of misinformation.
Yeah.
That's another line.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I have to say, overall, I really enjoyed the movie. Can I give you? Are you ready to move to complaints, or do you have more?
Oh no, we can move to complaints.
Okay.
Complaints.
As I recall reading the novel,
Uh-huh.
I liked the beginning more than the end.
Okay.
I think somehow the last part with the Dylar and the hotel room and that kind of trajectory, for whatever reason, I don't remember it speaking to me as directly as did the airborne toxic event and the professoriate and the other kinds of stuff it was talking about. I felt like the movie lost some momentum as it moved forward for me.
In some way, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Well, because number one, things move quite a bit differently. Because the entire last section is really moving Jack towards that confrontation with Willie Mink, and they have to, and things sort of conspire in a particular order,
right?
And they shrink a lot of stuff. Like in the film, you know, Murray gives Jack the gun during the airborne toxic event. In the book, it's Jack's father-in-law that visits.
Okay.
And gives him the gun.
But does that matter?
I think it does.
How?
Well, because number one, it's that Jack gets the gun and, you know, doesn't know what to do with. So he gets the gun.
Right.
Then after that, Murray gives him his whole killers and dyers speech, which basically says, you know, you've been a dyer all your life, you know, try to be a killer.
Yeah.
And then he gets a target.
Got it.
So all of those. So, but in the book, you get the gun and the killer and Dyer's speech, and the target just kind of happens via happenstance.
Got it.
I think the other major problem I have with the end of it is Babette is not there during the confrontation with Willie Mink.
Okay, now that you say that, I'm
Babette
like,
is not
that
there.
does sound like you're actually that's true to the book.
Yes, the book that I've taught.
Yes, I'm agreeing with you.
The
book. No, I'm just saying I'm surprised that all of a sudden I'm like, you know what, she wasn't there.
And the other thing that's a problem is that when they go to the hospital run by the German nuns,
yes,
Jack is the one who asks the nun, what is the current opinion of heaven?
Right.
And he's the one that they call a dumbhead. Having Babette say that, I found really problematic. I'm like, why did you give that bit to Babette?
Right.
Like, Babette shouldn't even be there.
But if she is, Jack should own that line.
Yeah, particularly in terms of the representation of Babette as a character, I didn't, the end of the novel really did a disservice, or the film did a disservice to her character, because they make her seem a little bit too ditzy, and she's the one that gets called the dumbhead. I was like, no, it's Jack is supposed to be the dumb one, because Jack's the one that believes in all of these things.
Well, and Jack is dumb, like in those ways.
So that was one of my major. That was probably my most major problem with the film, and it's probably the place where the film most deviated from.
Interesting.
Because Babette is not there. The whole it bounced off my arm into your leg, and I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that is not what would have happened. Like,
right? Yeah.
It seemed. I was just like
physics of bullets.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't see. Like, I don't know what. I don't understand what Baumbach was thinking, except that she's my major actress, so I've got to have her in this scene.
Yeah.
She should not have been there. Like that kind of took me out of the movie a little bit.
Fair.
So that's of all the things, because right up to that moment, I would have said the film's about 90% accurate to the book.
Yeah,
like they are trying. The only other thing that was weird was when Jack has the vision of Willie Mink in his room, which I'm like, well, number one, that's supposed to be the father-in-law when he shows up. When the father-in-law shows up, it's like 5 a.m. in the morning. Wilder wakes Jack to take him to show that there's someone outside. Jack sees a guy in a hoodie on his swing set and assumes it's the Grim Reaper, and it starts running around the house to find his copy of Mein Kampf, because that's his little lucky rabbit's foot and all that. And then he goes outside and he walks out and sees that his father-in-law. It is one of the funniest moments in the text, because he literally thinks death has come. And it's sitting there, and so. But
he's going to ward off death with his lucky copy of Mein Kampf.
Well, he carries Mein Kampf with him everywhere. It's always his good luck charm.
Man, academics are messed up.
So the whole Willie Mink kind of floating around in the background, that I didn't like either, because I'm like, Jack doesn't know that Mink. I think they were going for kind of like that white noise, things are all around us. But I'm like, having Jack, which I could live with the whole bumping into Willie Mink at the supermarket. But having Jack have a vision of Willie Mink in his house, when at that point he has no inkling who Mink is, I was like, that's a little weird.
Right.
That was the other moment that I was like, that's probably, I don't think I like that.
Okay. And that seems like a pretty legitimate and significant. It's just a small little plot detail in some ways, but it has ramifications for the meaning in the intention of the novel in ways that matter.
Well, the other thing, too, is that with Jack's father-in-law, he's the guy that knows how to fix everything around the house. He's the one that just kind of constantly points out to Jack that he's completely inadequate as a man in that kind of traditional man. I was like, I would have liked to have seen Vernon.
Right. It might have helped further elucidate Jack's character.
Well, and that's the thing, is that there are there's a lot that gets cut out.
Right.
That I think ultimately plays off both in Airborne Toxic Event and Dial-A-Rama.
And you might understand why a director would say the father-in-law, there's just too much going on in this movie to begin with. We don't need him. And yet there is something really kind of profound lost in him not being there.
I mean, the way I always envisioned the film was, it's 2.5 hours.
Oh, I'd like to have you make the film.
An hour for Waves and Radiation, a half hour for Airborne Toxic Event, an hour for Dial-A-Rama.
Yeah.
The problem is they wanted to make it all about the disaster.
Yeah.
And I think...
So they weighted it all wrong from your perspective.
I think so. I was like, I can understand that, because that's, that is in some ways the most filmic part of the book. But I feel like, they might have done, particularly to the first section, I don't know that they laid the groundwork enough.
Is the book weighted in that way? Or is it more equally like third?
No. It's what, the... Waves and Radiation is 100-something pages. Airborne Toxic Event is maybe 40.
So you're
and then
talking
Dial-O-Rama
about,
is the second half of the novel.
All right. Okay.
Like, Dial-O-Rama is basically half the book.
Got it. Okay. What else do you have? I'm out of complaints and celebrations.
Let's see. We've talked about a lot of things.
We could just edit this out later.
No, I think this is.
You think this is quality?
Oh, this is
Quality
quality.
part?
This is
This is
quality
quality.
stuff.
Okay.
This is the process.
It is the process.
This is the process of the show. This isn't some canned,
Right. We don't do a lot of. We clearly don't do a
overly
lot of
prepared,
editing.
overly prepared type thing.
Well, I think we're pretty well prepared.
No. I mean prepared in terms of canned.
So does this movie
Right.
classify as a horror movie?
No, it's more
I
of a.
don't-
It's going for more of a disaster thriller vibe.
Disaster thriller. Okay. So something like Sharknado.
And yet it doesn't. It certainly aspires to be
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, it does. But I think in all like the press that I saw with Baumbach, he really emphasized the disaster elements, which I was always worried about. I'm like, that's a part of the film. That's not the film, or the
Right.
I should say that's part of the book. It's not the book. I mean, it's basically the pivot point of the novel where Jack goes from conceiving of death one way to conceiving of it of another way.
Right.
Because Jack always thought death is this huge, big, floating thing around me. I must make myself a big, huge thing
Right.
to combat it. And then, of course, he gets death inside of him. He's like, okay, now death is a small thing inside of me. I need a small thing inside of me to deal with it. That's where the dialogue comes in.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, there, and I think part of it too is the dialogue by and large is directly from the book.
Yeah.
And I don't know that. I think maybe they might have needed to vary it a little bit. I think it might. I don't know that DeLillo's language translates as seamlessly to film.
There was something I liked about that, though, in that it made the film slightly unrealistic. Like the dialogue created. I don't know how to put this into words. Like the sensation that you were watching a film, but not in a bad way. In a way that like the film was trying to say something with that kind of distancing. Like it created a mood or a feeling for me that reflects in some way the way the novel wants you to feel.
Yeah, I think my concern.
Yeah.
And again, was that the characters are so weird from the get-go.
They're weird.
That I almost think they're too weird for the casual person to really identify.
It seems like that's true, right?
Like
because I was looking up some fair or foul, which
Yeah.
you don't have to do if you don't have time for,
No.
but on Google it was a 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think the audience reaction on Rotten Tomatoes is like 33% or something.
I looked at it this morning. It was 32.
Yeah, it's not.
So it's like it's
clearly not. I mean, it came and it went very quickly.
I don't know. Like people loved Wakanda Forever, and I didn't care for it. And
Yeah.
I'm reverse of them here. Like I actually enjoyed this in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But one fan, I thought you would love this review.
Okay.
Tonight I had my first viewing of White Noise, the movie.
Ooh, first viewing. That means he was planning to watch it more than once.
But yeah.
She.
Yeah. The film was a mashup of Salvador Dali, Fellini, and Kurt Vonnegut. With a sprinkle of magical realism found in Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah.
That sounds like the perfect movie for you. Like if I'm checking out. I don't know if you're a big Dali fan.
Yeah, I mean,
And maybe you don't care for Fellini,
Yeah.
but you would
I do
love
like
Vonnegut.
I do like Vonnegut, yeah.
And Marquez,
And I love
right?
Marquez. Well, in magical realism and John. Yeah. I mean, the
Like
problem
it's
is
one of your niche areas of expertise. That
it
golden
is.
pond upon which you sit
Yes.
would be magical realism,
as
right?
a frog. Yes. The golden frog pond on Golden Frog Pond.
That would be a great mashup to do.
That would be.
Yeah. Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, and that's the problem is that I worry that the world of White Noise, the film, is too divorced from like reality, even though it is very much about our reality as it is.
That's what the dialogue captured for me. Like that's part of it.
Yeah,
like, that
I feel
tension
like
between divorced from and grounded in.
But I feel it's too divorced from.
Yeah.
For people to really engage, to feel connected. Like I just think that everything's so weird from the get go that, and because they so cut back on the opening sections, I don't know that the film. My feeling was that the film might not have done enough to make people care about the characters, and yet, unless you're like me that have read the book and love the characters,
I loved it, and I've not read the book in 15 years. But I think you're right. Like, if you look at the reviews, if you look at the list of, Dali, Fellini, Vonnegut, and Marquez,
those are not...
Like,
Marquez is about as close to mainstream
right,
as
your
that
mainstream
list gets.
American is going to be like, oh, man, I haven't seen anything Fellini-esque in a couple of weeks. I need to go see me some more Fellini.
Yeah, well, where's the FCU? The Fellini Cinematic Universe.
I was catching up to it, yeah. That's the problem with Fellini. He doesn't have a cinematic universe. What a rube.
The continuity between his films is very disappointing.
Does he have any understanding of filmmaking?
Who is your big bad for Phase 2, Fellini? I came away from the film very lukewarm because I just couldn't divorce myself from the book.
I loved it as a spectacle and as a viewing experience, although I felt like it lost momentum as it moved forward. It felt like it slowed. Yeah, well, and I think a lot of that just has to do with how much they really made the airborne toxic event the center of the novel, when actually it's the smallest part the center of the film, when it's the smallest part of the book. So what's the lesson today? Is the lesson that you should never watch a movie based on your favorite book? I don't know about that. I mean, I've watched movies based on things I love in the past. Okay. And I haven't had, But, so, that you loved this much? I think is there another movie that did this? I mean, if there's a lesson to take away from this, yes. I don't think it's for me. I think it's for Baumbach, is that he really, really should have hired me as a consultant. Well, it does feel like that involves you a little bit in the lesson, actually. But I'm not the one learning the lesson. That's the important thing. Oh, okay. So the lesson is that you would teach. You would have taught. I would have been. I could have. I like to think that. I like to think the fact that they didn't change the names is because they heard me complaining about the name change. I do imagine often that our podcast has that kind of power. Yeah, that Baumbach was like, I need to keep him as Heinrich Wilder. Hamilton's going to crucify me if I change right. Like names, that's essential. That's essential. Yeah, like he's just going to detonate a bomb, and then nobody's going to like this movie. Yeah, exactly. So I guess we should have criticized it more. You could have fixed it up. Well, now it's too late. That's what I mean. You mean earlier? Yeah. Well, maybe someone will go back into the annals of the podcast and find where we critiqued it and point them out to Baumbach. God knows, in the world in which we live, everything gets rebooted every 3 years now. Pretty much, like Batman or whatever. You never know. We should be making another White Noise any day now. Yeah, you could have the White Noise, the Hamilton cut. Oh, ooh. It would be about as long as the Snyder cut, I think. You never watched the Snyder cut. Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, I did. Are you going to watch The Traitors? I don't know. We should totally do The Traitors. It is so much fun. It is. I'm telling you, it is. It is train wreck good reality television. See, that's the thing. There's no such thing as train wreck good. I'm telling you. Did you learn nothing from White Noise? Train wrecks are bad. Oh my God, I am the problem. You are the problem. It's too late though. You should have fixed it back in the '90s when you knew it, and you didn't. So now you're stuck with me, and I think we should do it. You just didn't read the book. If we did it, we would be deconstructing it in a way that would be tearing it apart, so that it would be doing people a favor. I'm a question. When does it become we are doing White Noise from I am doing White Noise? No, The Traitors. We're doing The Traitors. We're doing The Traitors. Oh. Yeah. I don't want in on your White Noise project. It's going to be a freaking disaster, man. No, it's going to be fantastic. It's got zero chance. It's going to be so good. Here's the Hollywood pitch. You know how White Noise went wrong? What we really need is a college professor. That's going to fix it. That'll fix it right up. We're going to bring him in. We're going to academic it up. We're going to be more true to the source material. We're going to makes you think I would academic it up. Have you read the stuff? You'd make an space of reified and flattened. Would not do that. White noises. Not for White Noise. I would not do that. I would bring life to it. So it's odd because there's a lot of ways that it is a very faithful adaptation to the book. And yet, it feels like it kind of lost part of the book for me. Maybe it'll be like Watchmen. It'll get better the more you watch it. Which Watchmen? The Zack Snyder version? Yeah. That doesn't get better as I watch it. Oh, it does too? No. That's a good movie. It's a perfectly fine movie. It's a pretty good movie. It's perfectly serviceable in terms of adapting the plot of the graphic novel. Doesn't really capture canon. Much else. Right. Got to get the canon. So, it's perfectly fine. As soon as it gets the canon, you'd be... In fact, I think I might have had notes comparing... In fact, I did compare this to Watchmen. Did you really? Yeah. Interesting. In that it kind of got the plot, but I think it kind of missed some of the larger stuff. Interesting. And there is a way that at times it felt like, we're doing this scene now. Okay. Yeah. And we're doing this scene now. Okay. Didn't feel that way to me, but I didn't know that there were scenes. Well, but again, that's part of my experience of the novel. Like I said, I couldn't separate the film from my experience of the novel. I think the past hour has demonstrated that fairly
Yeah,
clearly.
I mean I fully copped to
You
that.
know what
Like,
you'll be able to separate yourself from?
Don't say the traitors.
The traitors, 100%.
I can't.
Oh, you're gonna love it. By the time you're into the third episode,
How many episodes are there?
there's like 9 or 10.
Oh, jeez. No.
No. There's
No,
just 9 or 10, and I'm telling you, you are going to be on the edge of your seat. Like, who's
I
going to
won't.
get murdered? Who's going to get banished? Will the traitors be discovered?
No, I don't care.
Who exactly is this Cody guy, and why is he a star?
Well,
I don't know.
why are any of them are stars? Like,
None of them. But
there's that one scene you mentioned where it was like, I'm a celebrity. I can use that to manipulate people. I'm like, who are you?
yeah, it's like all of the celebrities are like, well, there has to be so many celebrities who are traitors. I'm like, how can you distinguish between the celebrities and the
Yeah, I
everyday
can't.
people here?
That's the thing.
Because
I couldn't
there's
either.
no difference
I
between
couldn't, except for except Ryan Lochte, who I eventually recognized.
Right,
'cause
the swimmer.
Because he's so dumb.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, oh, I remember him.
So
Back when he had a show on E.
So here's the thing.
And then the
Clearly-
other guy from the Shaws of Sunset or whatever it is on Bravo.
Reza?
Yeah, I recognize
Yeah.
Reza. Though I think those are the only two I recognize.
Well, you won't recognize Reza for long.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, the one already
Show
figured
doesn't treat him well.
The one already figured out the one that's on there with like her co-star. She's like, well, he's clearly one of the traitors. I'm like, well, you are correct because he is. I'm like, he's not going to
The Real Housewives lady?
No, I don't think it's the Real Housewives one.
Are you sure?
I can't remember.
Anyway, the point is, how much fun we're having already. We're gonna watch this show, and we're gonna do a deep dive into the underbelly of reality television.
And what are you going to be watching while I watch this?
What do you want me to watch?
Have you watched Wednesday yet?
I have not.
Because I just finished Wednesday.
Yeah, is it good? I
enjoyed it. Yeah,
It's very good.
yeah, I enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
like good to talk about. Is it going to be as good as Traitors to talk about?
I don't know. What is it going to be as
That's
good
the
as
question.
you think Traitors is to talk about? No.
No.
Traitors is going to be
Is it gonna
Scream
be-
Queen level good.
Is it exactly? Yes.
It was so. The conversation we had about Chad, that goes down in the annals.
I think there was a conversation between you and Amanda that I largely tolerated.
Maybe that's why I remember it being so
Yeah,
good.
I was just saying. I don't think that was you and me. I think that was you and Amanda.
You
and I was
didn't,
just
you didn't
kinda
appreciate
hating-
Chad.
No.
He's gone on to a serious film career, too.
Has he?
Yeah. Played Buzz Aldrin in something.
Oh, okay.
Like, you're playing an astronaut. Like, oh, another career that drinks a lot. Astronauts, right?
Astronauts don't drink a lot.
I feel like they do.
No, you're thinking about the people
Not on
in
the
Houston.
ship. Like,
You're
after they get
thinking
back.
No, you think about the people at Houston. They drink a lot. They're
No,
stressed out.
it's like
NASA.
Yeah.
NASA drinks a lot.
or the people in Houston.
People in Houston.
Just the people in Houston.
Listen,
period.
Just general.
They're being
people,
told. Listen,
Houstonians.
they're being
drink
told
a
they
lot.
have a problem all the time.
Right. No, I understand that.
my
I understand Houston we
goodness,
have a
that's
problem.
good.
But,
That was
but
good.
what,
I
I,
like
what I'm
that.
saying
Thank
is, I think that it's
God,
like
they're-
Top Gun. Like,
they're-
those guys play hard, work hard.
You mean Top Gun Maverick, which is a nominee for Best Film?
I can't even anymore. Maybe we should watch that and do that.
Well, probably should.
Top Gun's so good. I haven't seen the second one yet.
That's what we're talking about. Is the second?
I haven't seen the second one. The first
one was so good.
First one was so good.
Tom Cruise has magic in his tiny little finger.
I think it's just thetans.
Could be.
It's less magic than thetans.
I don't know. I can't explain it, but the man sells.
It does.
So we should probably wrap things
We
up.
should probably wrap things. Yeah.
But the good
because,
news
yeah,
is our listeners can definitely expect a show on the Traitors
I'm not sure
at
that
some
we
point
should.
in the near future.
But not next week, because next week.
Next week is Glass Onion.
Yes.
We're going to talk Knives Out.
We talk Knives Out, and we're
And,
talking about Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery.
So
Well,
good.
Knives are out kind of out every time we come into the studio. Oh, I should have saved that for next week.
Ooh.
No,
We can cut it out. We can cut it.
I just killed the opener. Now it's
killed-
better that I killed it.
You just killed. You killed it.
Yeah.
You killed it. Now you're revealing another layer.
That's just of your glass onion, which is the pretty thing that's empty.
That's right.
We're already
You know what
getting
also
into
is pretty and empty? The Traitors.
It's
I'm not sure it's pretty. I will agree. It's
like a
empty.
dumpster.
All right,
fire.
so next week.
I think it's an insult to dumpster fires to call that a dumpster fire. But
Which
yes,
is
next
perfect
week
for this show.
Next
But yes,
week, Glass Onion.
Glass Onion.